My name is Courtney Haig, and today I'm going to be conducting my speech on the topic of the death penalty and why I believe it should be implemented to persons that have been sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole, and that have been found guilty of crimes of a violent or sexual nature, with the exception of persons found guilty solely based on circumstantial evidence. Now, ever since the abolition period, the topic of the death penalty has been a controversial and emotional one. Questions arise such as, is it humane? Does it really bring justice to the families of the victims? Does the Bible find it punishable? As the Bible does state that one man shall not kill another man. Now, all we know as humans is that when a loved one is harmed, we want justice. So I want you to picture yourself. You're the parent of two small children. You're sitting in a trial. Everyone is silently waiting as a man that's been charged with the first-degree murder of a toddler, 6 counts of child molestation in the first degree, 30 counts of child pornography, and numerous counts of child abuse is awaiting his sentence. As you wait with anticipation, you can't help but notice the families of the other victims, tightly gripping each other's hands as the tears trickle down their faces. This man, Charles Holder, has a cold, hard look on his wrinkled face. His deep brown eyes stare intensely forward, as the subliminal smirk on his lips suggests his fearlessness. In not so much as a minute or less, it was over. This man, who has DNA evidence against him, indicating that he did indeed commit these crimes, now gets to live. No longer does he have to pay the bills, car note, put food on the table. No, that job has been given to the American people. While your daughter, your beautiful little 3-year-old girl, is gone and will never get to experience life again. This man has been sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. When you imagine a situation like this, I want you to keep in mind that every year approximately $32 billion is spent by the taxpayers to keep someone incarcerated in prison. Every year a person sits in prison, $22,000 is spent. This includes inmates imprisoned on petty charges. Today, states are spending more money on prisons than they are on education. And over the course of the last 20 years, the cost of prisons has gone up 570%. So one can assume at this point you have many questions. The first question I would like to execute is why a life sentence without the possibility of parole? Wouldn't that completely take away life in general? Wouldn't that just eliminate it? Many people like to take the humane approach and would like to side with the fact that now this person has to live with the crimes they have committed and rot in prison. But keep in mind that that prisoner still gets fed food at a decent hour, doesn't have to work for money. I mean, he has to work in the prison, but, doesn't have to pay bills. None of that. Wouldn't that defeat the purpose of a punishment? When it comes to the death penalty, back in the older days, before the new standard of decency with which the Supreme Court had established would be the reason for the complete downsize of the death penalty in the United States, being sentenced to death was the norm. If you had committed a crime serious enough, no questions asked, you were sentenced to death. Granted, reminiscing on how our ancestors dealt with these situations centuries ago is not what evolving as a culture and principle is about. But if we sit back and think about it, we can learn from the way they handled situations. For instance, back in that time, it did not cost taxpayers approximately $2.3 million to implement the death penalty onto somebody. Back then, if a person was convicted of a crime, usually depending on the location and the resources, they were taken out back and shot. Today, if you go to your local Walmart or anywhere else, you can find a box of your standard M9 service pistol, box of 50 bullets, $10, give or take, $1 or $2. Now, logically, I'm sure we are all aware that there are persons sitting on death row to this day that have been convicted solely on circumstantial evidence. Well, for those of you that don't know, circumstantial evidence is not factual. For example, Bob has been found guilty of the murder in the first degree, right? because someone testified against him, saying that they had witnessed him commit that crime, as well as a cellmate saying that he confessed to the crime while in the holding cell. That right there is strictly circumstantial because there is no DNA evidence against him. There's no video footage, no nothing. So, and yet now taxpayers get to pay for this man to sit on death row for God knows how long when he very well could be innocent. With that being said, if a person found guilty of a crime of a violent or sexual nature has been found guilty based on factual evidence, i.e. DNA evidence, linking him to the crime, why not be logical about the situation instead of emotional? And implement the more cost-efficient ways to deal with the death penalty. This way, we can save money as well as keep evil people off the streets. Because the humanity of it wasn't being challenged when the person was committing the crime, so why should it be challenged now? Okay. Is there any questions?
I have one.
Okay. Did you stop it?
No. Since your opinion is based on cost, if you were debating this to, say, a governor, and I ask you, would you be this passionate about the death penalty if it was a relative of yours that committed that act?
Well, I believe that everyone has their own... If someone commits a crime, they should pay for that crime, regardless of the emotional attachments to it. Say, if I committed a crime, I mean, all emotion aside, I have to deal with the consequences of that. Anybody else?
I would kill my family if it was they did something bad. I would just maybe probably beat them very hard. Does that count on violence on animals too? Like you killed a bunch of dogs, brutally killed dogs. Would you put this person to death? You consider animals as valuable as people?
No.
So you would just put him in jail?
Personal opinion.
Yeah.
I do not. I mean, of course, you should treat animals with, just as much kindness. Of course, they're living things as well, living, breathing creatures. But human life's a human life.
So you would just not suggest that penalty, or you would suggest life in prison for people that slaughters animals, like your pet, for example?
Well, no, definitely not life imprisonment.
No.
In America, because in America it's not like that. People slaughter animals all the time, for meat, for whatnot. Just
Michael Vick.
okay. Yeah, done. Okay. Thank you. Bow.